You hear me now? Can you hear me without it? I prefer it without it, because then I can gesticulate. I already have something in one hand, and then if I need a pointer. So, mobile installation. You ever seen anybody quite like that? I don't know if we've seen it exactly like that, because I don't know anybody that runs a a dipole and a Yagi and a vertical and all that other junk on their rig. But hey, somebody probably does. And you read the captions down below. I just thought it was kind of funny. You know, YLs love ham radio. Your wives, if you aren't not familiar with that term, she wants to see them back it in the garage. Yeah, okay. Anyway, mobile radio installations. I have done lots of them when I was working for the county. My military experience is a little bit different, but I did a lot of them when I was working for the county. I also built cop cars part-time when I was still in the Marine Corps in Lakewood for a guy that had a shop that built them for agencies around here. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff, and I know the ham mindset because I am a ham. Even though I'm a radio tech, I'm a ham, and I want to get my brand new stuff in my car like yesterday. So I'm in there, SIG plugging it in the SIG plug and doing all the running wire all over the place. And then my better sense gets a hold of me, and I do it the right way. So what I want to accomplish tonight is I want to show you some techniques to do this the right way. I want to put a little disclaimer out there. If you do something and you burn your car up, it's not on me. Okay, you did it. I didn't. Okay. Helps turn it on. There we go. Mobile radio installations. This can also transfer over to any electronics you're putting in your car, really. Anything that requires power or an antenna, basically. We're hams. And I know some hams that have a radio. I know a guy that has a CB. You have USB chargers. You have flashlight chargers. You have all kinds of stuff in your vehicle. This is going to be helpful when it comes to putting that stuff in properly. Because I've seen it all. I've seen cars burnt up, as a matter of fact. I've seen carpet melted in cars and all kinds of good stuff because their installations weren't correct. So the first thing you'd probably want to do is gather together all your stuff. Obviously, you're going to have a brand new radio from HRO or AES or whoever. It's going to come with a mount more than likely. If you buy a used one, it might not, whatever. Radio and a radio mount, antenna and coax, power wire and associated items like terminals and fuse holders with the fuse. The other thing that I started thinking about here, because I've done this 100 times, mostly in the shop where all I have to do is walk back to the bolt bin and pick out some screws and stuff like that. But if you already have an idea of where you're going to mount the radio itself, or you're going to put stuff in where you're putting screws in, this is a good time to have the screws. Go get that stuff now so that you're not taking another hour and a half out of your time to run into town to Ace Hardware to grab the screws that you should have had already. But you have to kind of think about where you want to put your stuff. And a mic clip, they usually always come with one, but do yourself a favor and make sure you get something with either Phillips head or Torx head screws, because lovely Motorola uses flat heads. To this day, you go buy a brand new Motorola radio, you pay $1,700 for a brand new Motorola radio, they're going to have flat head screws to put the mic clip on. I guarantee it. I don't know why. I think this kind of weird, and it's really hard to put them in, especially when they're like, 3/8 of an inch long. First and foremost, I made it in caps. I didn't highlight. I made it in caps to disconnect the battery. There's no good reason to not have the battery disconnected while you're doing this. You're going to blow fuses. You're going to run wire through potential places, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques that I use to get wire from the engine compartment in through the firewall into the passenger compartment that you don't really want the battery connected in case you poke a hole in something, because you'll burn yourself really bad with said item. And I'll talk about that when we're talking about pulling wire through. Determine where you're going to mount your radio. There's a million different places. Everybody has their own idea. I have things that I like to do to mine. I'm that guy that doesn't like drilling holes in my car. I have a hang up for drilling holes in my car, except for maybe in the firewall. Or the transmission hump if you have a car that doesn't have a console and it's just got a tranny hump in the middle like pickup trucks often do. Going through that sheet metal doesn't really matter because carpet's over top of it and poke holes in that. You're not going to see that very much. But dash mounts, console mount, if you already have a console in your rig, you can put one on the side, either side of it. Or if you have a vehicle that doesn't have one, and you can get deinstalled public safety ones that are pretty nice, actually. Suction cup mounts. I use the suction cup mount for my control head. A lot of people probably use that. You'll see pictures of that. Cutting board mount, I like that. It's just a cheapo plastic cutting board from Walmart. Costs you $7, $6 or whatever, maybe even less than that. Go to Dollar General, just get a small one and mount the radio. I'll show you some more of that kind of stuff as we go through here. It just makes it really nice, because when you're done, or when you want to take it out, let's say you want to take it out to clean your car, you want to take it out and use it on a bench, you just disconnect the power and the coax, maybe the control cable, off it comes. You don't have to unscrew anything. You just pull it out, put it on the bench, hook the cables back up. I have short ones that came with it. Power is easy. Anyway, seat bolt mounts, I'll show you that one too. I kind of like that for the light duty stuff. Cell phone holder for your control head, the little small control heads, lightweight. They work really well. And it only requires you to take one bolt out of your seat. I'll show you that in a minute too. Be careful with where you're drilling. I could tell you stories about that. I had a guy that worked for me at the county. We were gung-ho. We weren't in cop cars, but we were putting radios in brand new dump trucks, brand new. And they have a shifter console outside. They're all automatics now. It's a little shifter. And on the back side of that, they mounted the sander controller. And it's just a little plastic box with a circuit board in it and a joystick thing, so they can control the sander on the back. Well, he gets on there and puts the radio on the back of that, just drilled a couple of holes with self-drill and self-tapping screws. He did 6 trucks, and 5 out of the 6 had to go into the shop because the sander didn't work. Well, when he put it on there, the screws were too long, and he drilled holes in the circuit boards for the sander because he didn't open it up to see what was behind that. And then, that big gob of doo-doo came rolling downhill, and I got caught up in it. Anyway, so be careful where you're drilling stuff. If you're drilling into the dash plastic, that's pretty common for a mic clip or something like that, but consider what's underneath it. Are there wires underneath it? Is there glass underneath it? Is there ductwork for your AC and your heat? Is there ductwork under there somewhere? If you're drilling screws into your sheet metal on the floor of the vehicle anywhere, doesn't matter where. Is there transmission lines up underneath that tranny hump? Is there fuel lines running up in there somewhere all hidden that you're going to drill a hole in? Are there wire harnesses? Just roll under there and look around where you think you're going to drill a hole, and make sure you don't drill any of that stuff, because it creates all kinds of new problems that you don't want to deal with. Sir? Airbags. And airbags. Be careful of airbags. I haven't had anything happen, and I've been real close to them, and I've had stuff pulled off. I'll show you some of the stuff that I do that a lot of people get scared about, and that's another reason to disconnect the battery and let it sit a little bit before you go messing around, because it doesn't take a whole lot sometimes to set one off. But you have to definitely be careful of those. If you're using a mic clip, this is a good time to determine the location. Again, use care with screws. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again, because there's a reason I say it, because I've seen people drill holes in things that shouldn't have had holes in them. This is a good time also to route any mic control and speaker extensions. Like if you have a remote head that goes up on the dash somewhere, just a little bitty head, you're going to have at least a control cable that goes up there, maybe a speaker. And on some of the new stuff, like I have a Yaesu FTM 400. It's newer, it's not brand new, but the actual RT unit, the receiver transmitter, goes under the seat in my car, and everything connects to that. And all I have going up to the dashboard is a control cable. So you have to route all, and then the microphone connects to the RT and not the head. So it's not up here, it's down below, and you have to extend it, because if you don't, you're stretching the cord all up like that and having to hold it like this to talk on it. So they give you a little adapter and a piece of cable that you can extend it. You have to put all that stuff in there, and it's a good time right there and there to plan that route and maybe even start doing it. There's a suction cup mount. That's where my control head is. And on my truck, it's up on the A pillar, which is the front pillar in front of the driver's, where the driver sits. That's the A pillar. And it's just to the side of the A pillar. Let me see if this is going to work today. This is the A pillar right here coming up. You can see that coming up through there. There's the actual mount, or the actual RT, or that's the head, sorry. The head and the, oops, geez, I'm going crazy here. Here's the control cable that comes up out of this trim. So I took the trim off. A lot of people get scared with that. It's just some bolts. Take that handle off. There's some little covers. Pop the covers off. Take the thing off. That rubber, this rubber piece here comes off. And I'll show you a couple of spots here. I have stuff torn apart. You can kind of see what's going on. I didn't take this apart because I was lazy. Didn't want to take it. It's already done. I didn't want to take all that apart and have to put it all back together again to take pictures. Kind of lazy, but whatever. Anyway, it's all run up in there. So the only thing sticking out is a little short piece, just enough with some service length on it. So if I want to move that thing off there, yes, sir.
Do you have any issues with overheating on the dash?
No, not yet. Okay. No, I haven't. I will back that up with saying that I always cover it up if I know I'm going to leave my truck outside somewhere in the sun. I just put a piece of cardboard or a tissue or a napkin out of my console. I just drape it over top of it. Just, yeah, the A-pillars have airbags in them too. Just anywhere in there. There's wire running in that one. There's wires running in that stuff. You just got to be careful. I didn't drill anything in there. I just took it apart. Now I told you about breadboards. There's the RT. That's the RT right there. And I have this, we're going to talk about this particular stuff right here, fusing. We're going to talk about it. This is on there because originally I wanted to run more than one thing out of that. And I had it so that I can take my power cable coming from the battery. I can plug into my distribution and have more than one place to distribute DC power. Problem is, in this truck, it's really sensitive to any kind of, what I want to say, parasitic load. And those LEDs there's LEDs on there, and if there's fuses in there, they stay on. And guess what happens to my truck? I get all there, click, 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 and I'm like, oh, wonder what happened. So it's there. I hardly ever use it, but this here is the main power again, and it can be connected to that. That's why it's still there. Now you might ask, well, how do you keep that under the seat? It's just slippery plastic, right? Yeah, it is. But if you think about how this mounts on here, I just use some self-tapping or self-drilling screws and put them straight through so they stick out about a ½ inch and they grip the carpet. You just slide it up underneath there, drop it down, and it grips the carpet. It doesn't go anywhere. I've done this in numerous vehicles too, by the way, and it works really well. You could actually, if you wanted to bolt that up to the back of your back seat or something, or someplace in your vehicle, you could do that as well. There's a pedestal mount or a seat bolt. That's a seat bolt mount. This is a little lightweight thing. This particular stem right here, this stem is kind of a rigid, it looks like aluminum. I'm not sure what the metal is, but it's pretty flexible until you stop bending it. Then it stays where it's bent to. And they work really nice for light duty stuff. The reason I say light duty is because even the light duty stuff, when you're rolling down the road, you're bumping around, it vibrates. So you're trying to see what the head says, and you can't move your head fast enough to see what it says, right? Because it's vibrating. But it is a great way to have it secured and down low if that's what you like. There's just the bottom of it. It has a crow's foot on it. You take that front left seat bolt out and you drop that. You don't even have to take it all the way out because it's split in the front. That mount there, where it's split right here in the front. Loosen the bolt up enough to get it underneath it, put it underneath there, kind of twist it around where you want it, tighten the bolt down. There you go. There's a picture of how I ran my microphone extension. The speaker extension, I have an external speaker on my radio. It sits, I'll show you a picture of that too. I think it's the next one, but it comes up underneath there as well from the back seat. But this comes up, and I like to have everything behind the trim or under the carpet in a safe space, because then nobody's tripping over it. If you're moving the seat back and forth, you're not snagging it. You're not wondering, what's that funny smell? Why is this thing smoking? Why does it smell like burnt plastic? You don't have to worry about any of that. And it's just clean, nice and clean and neat. There's a speaker. The speaker extension, it comes down and it goes up underneath the carpet and goes down and comes back out carpet at the radio right underneath that very seat. All right, that was kind of maybe a bit of a blur. But that was just kind of like getting your head around, what do you want to do? How do you want to, what do you want to use for mounts? Where do you want to put everything? So now the other thing is where do you want to mount your antenna? There's a bunch of different ways. And there have been studies done by people that are way smarter than me. Motorola did one exclusively and extensively to the point where they didn't even want to share the information. I got my hands on that particular study, and I have it available if somebody wants to read it. It's kind of boring and very technical. But what it says at the end of the day is center of the roof is the best for the best ground plane anywhere, anytime. So if people say, oh, it works just as good on the hood, or it works just as good on the fender or on the door, no, it doesn't. We all know about antennas. Everybody in here should know about antennas. Any antenna is a dipole. Even a vertical that's mounted to your car is still a dipole, right? You got to have a return path somewhere. And on a vehicle where you have just a omnidirectional antenna, the ground plane that's the return path is about a quarter wavelength of metal that your roof provides, your hood, whatever. It's not to say that the rest of the places won't work. They do work because everybody does it, and they do work. But if you saw the radiation pattern, it's not this beautiful, nice, symmetrical bubble of energy coming off. It's distorted one way or another. It's usually to the metal side. The majority of the lobe is to the metal side of that particular picture, if you will. If you mount it on the edge of the, like the door, you'll see mine are mounted on my door lip. The majority of the energy goes across the vehicle. That's just the nature of RF. That's it. So the question you have to ask yourself, do you want to drill that 3/4 inch hole in the roof of your car? I'm a radio tech. I've drilled holes in brand new cop cars and ambulances and you name it. I've drilled holes in brand new stuff. Never had one leak, but I'd never drill a hole in my vehicle. Not like that. I wouldn't. I just won't. Because what do you do when you take it to trade it in, even at the used car lot? What they're going to, well, you have a hole in the roof and it's going to leak. Because they're non-radio people, they don't even think about, we can put a rain cap on there that looks just like an antenna, but it doesn't have any whip on it. I'm not drilling holes in mine. You guys feel free. If you want the best performance, drill a hole right smack in the middle of the roof. You just got to be careful doing it because you don't want to jam it down too hard. I've seen that happen before too. People are leaning real hard on the drill and a hole saw and it goes through the roof. And then what's right underneath it? The headliner. Yeah, now you have a 3/4 inch hole in your headliner too. Yeah, tell that to your boss when cop car.
One thing to add on that, to those who are drilling through the roof, they do make rubber grommet plugs where you can remove the antenna completely out, put them in.
Yep.
And they do seal real good. I use them on company vehicles myself.
Yep.
They do.
You can use that, or they if you have I like NMO mounts, new Motorola mounts. I like those. They just work well. They're easy to get on and off. You don't have to mess around with any tools or anything. If you don't have a good enough grip, just ask your buddy, hey, can you take that thing off? They make rain caps that they look just like the base, but they're shorter and they have a rubber gasket. But Grant's right, they do make rubber plugs that go right over top of it if you want to drill a hole. But I'm not drilling a hole. It's my rig. I'm not drilling the hole. No.
Don't feel bad.
Well, I've had good success with other methods. You can have good success with other methods too. You just have to make sure that you're careful when you do all this stuff so that you're not crunching stuff and, you're going to have to spend a little bit more money, but whatever. I'd rather do that than drill a hole in my car and get, $2,000 less because I have a hole in the roof. Of course, I don't put my ham radio stuff in thinking that I'm going to sell my car either, so whatever. The other choices are edge of the door trunk lip. They make clamp-ons. You can do hood lip. Last but not least, the last thing, my last choice ever would be on a bumper of anything. CB maybe. Lou has an HF antenna mounted on the bumper, but that's about the best place for that big monster and it works. It works. HF is a little bit different because it uses the capacitive difference between the vehicle and the ground for ground plane anyway. It's a little bit different, but to put a VHF or UHF antenna on your bumper, you might just as well put a potato out there because the car is going to absorb 90% of it. The other options, they make luggage rack mounts. I think it's Rhino. There's a couple of different companies that make a whole line of clamp-on stuff that works just fine as long as you have it over top of some ground plane. There's my unadulterated roof of my truck. But right slap in the middle of that is the best ground plane ever. Right between those two ribs would be the best place. And there's way more than a quarter wavelength of ground plane underneath that antenna, if I was to put it there. But you can kind of see there, my antenna is off on the one side, and that's going to be the next picture. So I use the clamp on. It clamps on the door lip, and it's at the hinge side. So when you open it up, the coax, and we'll show you that here in a minute, the coax kind of folds out with it, and then it folds back up down inside the vehicle. And those work really well. Now, what I'm talking about when I was telling you about the radiation pattern, the majority of the radiation pattern for this is going to follow the metal to the left of the vehicle. Not all of it, but the majority of it will follow the ground plane. Just like HF, if you have it mounted on the back bumper, the majority of it's going to be out the left front. If it's on the right back, left front. Just the nature of RF. These are really good. Comet and Diamond make both. I have both types. I buy the heavy duty ones because the difference in money is not enough to put some light duty thing on there that just gets blown over when you're going down the freeway. Because there's a big thumb screw or a big, like a wing nut that tightens it down to keep it from folding over and moving around. So that more heavy duty you get, the better. And you can get them in different configurations. You can get SO239. I think you can get a 3/8 stud, or you can get them in Animo. I hope you can see that picture. What I'm trying to show you there is on my particular truck, there's the rubber seal is on the inside of the upper lip of the door. It's a Tacoma or a Toyota Tundra, and it's on the upper lip of the door, and it's right along that edge. Well, I just folded it over to mount this on, and it slides down over, and then this little kind of light colored metal right here. Sorry about all the shaking, but that little light colored piece of metal is just a piece of soft aluminum that comes with it that goes up underneath those. There's 4 screws, 4 set screws. There's 2 on this side, 2 on this side. They're hard to see this side because I don't have the rubber pulled all the way back. But that clamps that antenna down without marring up the inside of your door. So once again, you're just protecting it. You're not gouging the paint off, making a spot to rust. And they will close. They'll close on the trunk lip. They've been engineered so that there's very few vehicles with a gap small enough where it won't shut, because they work. You just got to make sure you have it seated all the way down, whether it's on the trunk lip or on the door lip, on the door edge there. There's my car with the same thing. I just happen to have the trunk open. That's the other thing too that you want to make sure is if you're using it on a trunk or a hood, that when you open one of those up, that you're not crashing that antenna into the roof of your car or the glass or anything else. You got to make sure that you open it up, slide it on there, and fit it so that it's a couple inches or whatever, 1.5 inches, 2 inches away from the vehicle when you have it open. Otherwise, you're scratching your paint and scratching your glass up potentially. It's kind of what it looks like. I know that looks kind of janky there with a piece of tape on it, but guess what? That's all you got to do to hold that coax over there to keep it from getting pinched where it's not supposed to get pinched. And I'm going to show you on my truck. I think that's the next slide. I just used Gorilla Tape and taped the excess coax, or taped the coax down along the door. The truck was a little bit different because of the distance between the top of the door and the cab of the truck from the top, and you'll see that in a minute. But I just use a piece of white tape there. That's medical tape. It's really super sticky and it doesn't come loose, to hold the coax over so that when I shut the trunk, it just kind of folds up underneath, and there you go. Oh, I told you a lie. I'll show you in a minute when we start actually installing the antenna. That's coming up in this series of photos, because now we're going to talk about coax, where to put it. I've seen some of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. Well, I shouldn't say stupid, ignorant. People that are ignorant to the whole idea of coax and power and radio and stuff like that. You got to find a place where your coax can go through safely without getting cut, melted, pinched, kinked, any of that kind of stuff. Find a safe passage. Again, take the trim off and very carefully put the stuff up underneath there. Carefully, because airbags, that could be an issue. Something to consider there too is don't put the coax or any power wires or anything else across. Like if you go from one side of the pillar to the other side, don't cross in front of the airbags. Don't cross in front of the airbags.
Don't place a radio in front of the airbag.
Don't place a radio in front of the airbag on the dash or something like that either. Or drill into that, like the passenger side. You, for whatever crazy reason, you wanted it over there on the dash, and you start drilling holes in there, and there's a big airbag in there. Yeah, ooh, yikes. Just be careful. No kinks, so make sure you lay it out straight before you start pulling it through stuff. Extreme bends beyond the manufacturer's specs, and if you're unsure if it's RG58A, which is usually AU, is what you should use in a car. If you know that information, you can look it up anywhere. You can go to any website that handles coax, or just say, what is the minimum bend radius on RG58AU, and it'll tell you in inches or whatever. RG58 is pretty small, but still, you don't want to fold it in half and pinch it down tight. It's not good for it. And you don't want to use, there's two RG58s that are really common, RG58A and RG58A/U. You want to use the A/U? Anybody tell me why?
A is for audio.
No. Nobody knows. Okay, that's cool. A is solid center conductor. Okay, so in a vehicle, I've seen this a million times too, people come in and say, yeah, but it's really good coax. The difference between that and the braided or the stranded is so little that it's not worth trying to figure out why you don't have high or good SWR on that coax. Well, I just put it in. Yeah, but you flexed it around enough times it broke the center conductor. Okay, with stranded, it doesn't break. It can bend back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Public safety vehicles are rough because they're in and out of them. They're using them. You know, these guys are putting 5,000-6,000 miles a month on their cars. So just think about that. Okay, no sharp edges. If you go through a hole that you drilled in the firewall with coax, no sharp edges. So you're going to put something around that. We're going to talk about that more in more depth in a minute, but no sharp edges anywhere. Yes, sir?
Some vehicles have those auxiliary wire passages that are set up in advance where you can, they have like stuff you can add on, and they have the passage preset, like you can use it.
We're going to talk about that. I'll show you some pictures. Yep. So for sure, Ford Crown Vic cop cars, they come already set up with the passenger side rocker panel is empty. There's nothing in it, and it's big. You can put a lot of stuff in it. We used to put a big wad of stuff in there that was back in the days when all the lights in the light bars they weren't LEDs or anything like that. They were individually powered. You know, they had motors in them that ran the flashers and all that stuff. So you had a big wad of wire, and it all fit in there. Every car that I've ever taken apart, minus some heavy equipment, has, if it's a civilian personal vehicle that has, you're using it every day, you take the rocker panel trim off, and there are places in there to put stuff. And I'm going to show you pictures. Use the wire tray in the rocker panel. That's my next part of the slide right there. Use the wire tray in the rocker panel. I have not found one that I couldn't get at least my ham stuff in. I wouldn't want to try and build a cop car with all that crap in there, because anymore nowadays, I guess, because the light bar is just a CAN bus cable. It's not much, just a little itty bitty thing. They've come a long ways there. Smaller coax in the door rubber, closing it in the door rubber is okay. Now, I've had friends of mine, Mike, I'm only saying it because Mike and I have had this conversation before. He said, well, I thought you said not to close that coax in the door, but you have yours closed up in the door in the trunk of your car and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if it's RG316, that's why it's so small on that particular piece of coax, is because you can close it in the door without it won't leak. And if you're careful and you run it across the rubber instead of underneath the rubber where the door is, the metal's there, it's fine. And I'll show you on mine. You can see the divot in the rubber on my truck where the coax goes through, and the coax is perfectly fine. So only the small stuff. Even RG58, you don't want to close that up in the door rubber. It's just too big. You're going to end up with a leak more than anything. You're going to end up with a leak. Another thing to be said about how to route coax is if there's a door in your vehicle that, if you're a family and you got 3 kids and you're opening all the doors all the time, then there's no way around it. But like me, nobody ever gets in the passenger rear door of my truck, ever. So that's the door I use to put my antenna right there, and I run my coax through that door. It wouldn't matter, but it doesn't get used, so why not? Okay, this is kind of hard to see because the colors all blend together and it was sunny out. But there's the coax runs down the actual door itself underneath some Gorilla Tape, and it's just that RG317 or 316, the real small stuff. It runs down from up where that mount was on the top of my door down to the hinge. There's the hinge of the door right there. And the distance between, I mean, it was, when I had the door open, the distance is about that far with the door open up at the mount side. And if you can see here, I think in the next picture, right above the hinge, that's all there is to it. You have to have enough with the door all the way open, but wind it all the way out before you lay it in there. Tape it down, and then you can see here, this, oops, wrong button. You can see here, you can just barely see where the coax comes across the rubber there. It's just kind of indented a little bit. So what? It doesn't leak, doesn't make any noise. And the coax, does anybody see the coax squash there at all? You don't. All right, then this cable goes down behind the rubber seal on the door, and the B pillar, that's the second pillar between the two doors, is called the B pillar. This is on the passenger side of my truck. There, I have this rubber pulled off. This rubber right here is all pulled off, and it's kind of slotted. Okay, on the back side of that rubber, it's slotted, and then this bit right, kind of hard to see maybe. This bit right here, you can kind of see it right there along there. That's where there's two pieces of the body are put together and they're spot welded, and that rubber goes down over top of that. So you don't want to put the wire in there, the coax in there, and then put the rubber on it. Oh no. You want to pull that rubber off and go on the inside of that and then cross over the rubber. And of course, I took this B-pillar trim off. I didn't want to take it off this time because this one here is a bit more of a challenge because you have to take the seat belt loose on this truck, and you got to take some bolts out. You have to take all the rocker panel covers off, all that other stuff to get that piece off. But it's the best way. And there are airbags underneath that. So I ran it right down along the side of it where there's no obstruction whatsoever. And somebody might say, oh, what about the RF? Well, if you have your radio set up properly, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, you don't want to have a bad ground. You don't want to have loose connections and things like that, because then you might have stray RF and it could set the airbag off. But in all my days of tearing cars completely apart, even after they had airbags everywhere, never had a problem with where we ran coax or wire or anything. Now, I'm not saying that you won't, but I never have. I was lazy again. I didn't really lift up the carpet. So here's how I did it. I took all that off, the B-pillar trash, all that stuff off, ran the coax down. It goes all the way down to the bottom down here. And you can kind of see where the carpet's at here. Well, across there, the carpet's in there. When you take that B-pillar trim off, the carpet is exposed, and I went up underneath the carpet. When you go up underneath the carpet for any rig anywhere, you don't want to put it down where you're going to have wear spots, because even though nobody gets in the right rear of my truck, somebody might get in there at some point in time, and what's on the floor all the time? Their feet, they're jumping up and down. I throw stuff in the back of my truck, it's bouncing off of that part of the floor. What happens? Eventually, you might rub through that coax, and then you're going to be like, oh, now I got to take it apart. Or you might not even know. So what I did is I came down underneath the carpet. I loosened up the seat bolts. Sounds like a lot, but it's the way to do it. Really, it is. Loosen the seat bolts up so that you can get your arm under there. And I pushed the coax all the way back. I didn't really take a picture here, but the back seat's folded up. There's a tool tray thing that goes across the back of my truck. And up between the tool tray and the place where the back seat bolt to the body of the truck, I ran that coax back in there so that there's no way on green earth that anybody can do anything to that coax inside the truck. It just won't happen. And then it goes all the way over to the driver's side of the vehicle. Everybody still awake? I don't see anybody bobbing for apples yet. Same thing with my car is a little bit different because it comes down. That's the rear hinge of the trunk deck hinge there. You can see that this particular coax cable is about 18 inches of RG316 connected to, it's like RG8X or whatever this coax is down here. It might even be 58. I don't know. It's a little bit bigger than 58, but it's connected in. The difference from over 17 feet is not enough to anybody to really worry about. But there you go. That's That's a kit that I bought. It all came with the mount that was in there. But this piece goes through the trunk rubber. And on this one, it doesn't come across the top, like right here. It comes down on the inside of that trunk rubber, which is even better yet because the top rubber still seals against the trunk and it's going to seal it up nice. And it follows the trunk in, and there's, short bit that's actually hanging down in there. I could probably do a little bit better job of dressing it down inside the trunk, but when I put stuff in there, I'm just careful. And it's only me. But that's something else if you want to do it in the trunk or so a lot of people have SUVs. It's the same. It's all the same concepts. You come down off, you go across the rubber, you go up underneath any kind of plastic paneling that you have, and there's seal rubber on there, and some of it has glue stuff on it. Just don't get the glue all over your hands and your clothes, and it will glue back down. And I just about guarantee it won't leak. This never had it leak, but some of it has glue. Fear not, it's fine. All right. Power, kind of save power till last because it's the last thing you're going to do when it comes to connecting things together. But you have to really be careful with power because when you energize it, if it's cut through anywhere on the positive side and you have the battery hook all the way up, you are going to have some issues, especially if you didn't fuse it right. So you're going to determine the safest way to get from the battery to the radio. So there's only two ways that I would ever do power install. I would do it either fuse it right at the battery, or I would have a bus, a power bus that I created myself with a short lead of heavy gauge wire, probably no more than a foot long to the battery, and you're still going to have that fuse block under the engine compartment. You're just going to have to protect it some, or you may even want to, you can put a big circuit breaker on that main bus, the main bus wire, and then break the rest of them out into smaller fuses, and then that way you have more than one way to get in. You're just going to have to remember all of that has to go through the firewall at some point. So there's a couple of things we're going to talk about with protection going through the firewall that could possibly determine whether or not you're going to, what technique you're going to use. Again, where possible, use the wire tray and the rocker panel. Don't run the wire. I've seen it. I'll tell you a real quick story. Seen it where two stories actually. We built a brand new cop car for the city of Bellevue, a nice Crown Vic. It came in. Actually, we didn't build it. We had a 50-50 contract. We did half. Another company did another half. And the other company was a tow company, and they just had some guys that thought they knew what they were doing. Needless to say, they didn't. We got a Bellevue car in after they were built. It was probably 2-3 months later. And they said that something was smelling funny. So we're like, First thing we noticed is all the fuses were inside the passenger compartment. Big no-no, okay? A cop gets in an accident. The fuses are all inside. What do the fuses do? Mike, what do? What do they protect? The wire. Okay, they don't protect your radio. They protect the wire that's connected to your radio. So if the fuse is inside the passenger compartment within 6 inches of the radio, all that wire between the battery and that fuse, if it gets chopped, the fuse isn't going to blow. The wire is going to melt and start your car on fire. And guess what they did? They ran that power lead down through the firewall. They ran it through a grommet, thank God. But they came right down underneath the driver's feet. And then they attempted to run it up underneath the seat frame. And that was where the real problem was, two problems, big problems were fuses were in the passenger compartment. And the second one was when they bolted the seat back down. They went right down over like a number 6 red wire, hot wire, and squashed it. And it from the point that it touched the seat all the way back out, the carpet was melted almost all the way through. That's what was smelling funny.
And fuses are always sized according to your wire, not your radio. Whatever wire you have, that's what you're going to set.
Good point. And we could have discussions about what gauge is what. Usually most mobile radios come with a 15 or 20 amp fuse, which means a 10 gauge at the most with 20 amps. No, 10 will do 30 amps, right? Yeah, so 12 gauge, probably 12 or 14 gauge wire is usually what I've seen on power wire for radios. Just use the factory fuses or go buy the spares you buy, make sure they match. Okay, if the flashlight charger that you have says a 7.5 amp fuse, then don't use a 10. Just use a 7.5. And fuse everything. Where did I say?
Source.
Engine compartment, right? Yeah. Huh?
At the source.
At the source, whatever that happens to be. But generally speaking, in a car, if you're hooking it to your car battery, it's in the engine compartment.
And you got to fuse both leads.
Pardon?
Fuse both leads.
Fuse both leads. I'm guilty of not doing that, but
In a car you should.
yeah, I suppose. Never had any trouble, but I don't disagree. I don't disagree, but I've never had any trouble. Never run wire under wear areas and seat frames. That's my story here, or that was one of the first story. The second story was when it comes to this next piece here. Always, I didn't say sometimes, I said always use a grommet or PVC fitting when you're passing through the firewall. Because what's the firewall made out of? Metal, and it's sharp, right? Because it's just sheet metal. It might have some insulation stuff on it, but guess what? Where you poke the hole through, it's like a razor blade. And wire is not safe from that sharp edge. It's just not. We always we drilled about a 2-inch hole in the firewall of a Crown Vic to run all the wire through it. And then we started off with a round rubber grommet. Fits up in there. The inside diameter of the what shall we say, the groove on the grommet was 2 inches. And then it has the overlay, which was about a, I don't know, 2 3/4 inch overall outside diameter, so that you had some protection. Problem with that is that when you start shoving all the wire through there that will fit, it catches. And if you don't use something like, there's wire lube or there's Vaseline or something to push all that wire through, it pulls the grommet off of the sharp edge, and then you have the sharp edge exposed, and wire can potentially. So we went away from that, and we started using PVC fittings, electrical conduit adapter is what it's called. It has a nut on one side, and it has a plastic pass-through. There's no way on green earth that you can get wire between that adapter and the firewall. There's no way, because it has a nut on it, and it, the threaded part of that plastic goes through the hole. You thread it down, and then it just has a flare on it that you pass all the wire through. Chase nipple. I looked them up the other night, and they call them adapters or whatever. They said, yeah. And I found really cool ones too that I hadn't really thought about before. Always use that, and then waterproof accordingly. So, and also size it accordingly. If you have, 2 or 3 wires going through, and all you have is a 2-inch adapter, go back to the hardware store and buy a smaller one. You don't need that great big giganto thing unless you're building something with, big giant cable to go through. And then on the outside, if you can get to it, you got to figure out a way to waterproof that as best you can after the fact as well. So RTV, trying to get some RTV up there, squirted around the wire. And if you can, you got to keep that hole up high on the firewall, as high as possible, to prevent any kind of splash through. I've never seen one. All the cop cars we built at EVAC, I never saw one of those leak, and we had it up pretty high, so it does work very well. The other thing is, I will show you a couple of pictures here in a second of the grommet and the adapter that I found that I thought was cool. It has a gland in it, so that not only do you screw it down to the firewall, but it has a gland, a screwed part on it that collapses a rubber gland around the wire. That's absolutely the best. Existing grommets are okay. I used an existing grommet on my truck install. I'm going to show you that here in a minute. If there's room. So if you have if the grommet is, let's say it's 1 inch and you have 1 inch worth of wire going through there, I'd probably think again and just drill a hole or find another way to get it in there. You don't want to start pushing stuff through and nick any of those other wires, because then all bets are off and you're on your own, man, trying to figure out your electrical problem that you created.
They make a tool now. And it's had it up for quite a while, and I got it from O'Reilly's. And what it looks like is a screwdriver that they removed the shaft out of it and they have a tube in there. And on the end of the tube, they beveled it where it's real sharp. When you get into a grommet like that, push that in, slide your wire through that, and pull it out. And when you're releasing it, and when you're pulling that tool back out, it just lays the wire right down in there and seals everything.
If you have room, that's great. I'm not that I'm cheap. I was always trying to figure out a way to get stuff through other places. We used an old stainless steel antenna whip. Because two things, it'll poke a hole in that little skirt that's around there. Because the automotive grommets usually have a skirt on them that it kind of comes out and then they tape around the end of it, and then they tape the wire all the way out or whatever. And on those skirts, if you have, let's say on my truck, I had the power wires coming through that firewall. That's all I had in there. I just took that's why I disconnected the battery too, because I'm using a stainless steel whip that if I touch something, I'm getting burnt or I'll ruin something. But you poke that through and then you go back inside on the driver's side and it's sticking down right by where the brake pedal was at. And same thing. I used to like using the ones with a ball on the end. I've had my assistant used to bend them over, but then you have this bigger hole than you want coming through because you have that hook part that you're pulling through the rubber, and it tends to tear the hole open bigger. So if you just tape the wire on there, just tape the crap out of it so that it doesn't come off and gently ease it through. And you can get wire lube or just a little bit of Vaseline or spit even. Just pull it through the grommet. It'll be fine. Now there was a questioner asked earlier about, don't they have pre-made cable passway or cable trays or whatever? And that's the driver's side rocker panel on my truck. Take the trim off, just pops right off. And there's existing wire. This big black loom right here is the existing wire, and my power and negative are both coming all the way through. There's another picture of it. Took this picture because all those bridges that go over that thing, those all snap open, so you can just lay the wire in if you want. You can feed it through there if you want, whatever. I like having those that you can open up, because if you forget something, you don't have to go backtracking and do all this weird stuff. You just open it all up and throw it in there. I didn't put any split loom on mine, because that, no matter what you do, once you put it inside those bridges and you put the rocker panel trim back on it, you're not going to hurt that wire at all. It's in plastic. It's already in the plastic. You might want to zip tie it to the other cable there. I tend to not like to do too much of that, zip tying onto other stuff, because then you have to start cutting things, and if you have to service stuff, whatever, take stuff back out when you sell the car or whatever. But yes, both sides, passenger and driver's side, will have a cable tray, and the front and back seat also have those same thing. The back is usually shorter, but there is a cable tray in there. Now you might ask, well, how do you get the wire up out of there? Anyway, I won't go there yet because there's pictures of that. Not a very good picture. This is a hard one to take. This is the kick panel that's right up against my brakes, right up where my brake pedal's at on that side of my truck, and it just covers where on my truck the emergency brake is a step-on one. It's just that piece of plastic that's behind that. I didn't take it off because I'm lazy. Actually, I had it off, and there's a picture of it with it off. But I wanted to show you where it comes through the firewall. It's coming through an existing grommet. There's the wire that was already, the loom that's already there, and through the insulation, I just ran the wire down through here and came and had this panel off. Oops. Had the panel off, and I dressed the wire down inside of that kick panel, and then it comes right out into that wire tray that I just showed you. Okay, here is the first picture of this is the engine compartment side. So there's an existing grommet. I pushed those two wires through with the antenna whip. Then I put a piece of split loom on it, because it's in the engine compartment, protects it from dirt, moisture, and heat somewhat. Not always, but this is way over against the fender on the front of my truck. There ain't nothing gonna keep you from getting squirrels, man. If they want in there to eat your stuff, they're gonna get in there and eat it. We had a rat in our work truck. It smelled really bad one Monday, and our truck was all sealed up, shut up nice and tight. A rat got in there somehow and ate its way through the dash of a brand new Dodge pickup truck. The guys at the motor pool were not happy. We don't know where we got it from. They're like, oh, the motor radio shops, it must be nasty. They got rats over there. Okay, we're right next to the railroad tracks, and yeah, whatever. Anyway, there you go. This is, I put the trim back on, and I pulled the wire up from underneath the carpet, so you can see, okay, I'm in the process of putting it in there. So it comes up out from underneath the trim here, under the carpet. Okay, I just separated the carpet out so you can see. And we're going to show you a follow-up picture later on about the same thing. But that's what you do. You come up out from underneath, under the carpet. There's a split in the carpet, and if there's not a split, underneath my truck, there's a rear seat heating duct that comes out, and there's a great big hole in the carpet like that anyway. Well, guess where? You can pull your wire out right there. It's just plastic in the carpet. If there isn't, take a box knife, cut a hole just big enough to get your wire through, and you'll never see it other than the wire coming through it. You'll never see it, and it won't. If it's under the seat, it's not going to rip. And that carpet's a pretty tough stuff.
Also on the carpet there, a lot of the vehicles, they have two pieces of carpet instead of one. In that area where they overlap is underneath the seats. You're able just to slide it right through that.
Well, that's the case in this one. You'll see in a minute. Okay, this is where the wire is coming. It looks like a mess. It's because I have the cutting board pulled out, and the wires are just kind of like they're coming from different directions, and that's my excuse anyway. It looks kind of like spaghetti, but there you go. It's coming up. There's the heat duct. The carpet, we got a big old hole right there for the heat duct anyway, so I ran the power wire coming up through this way. I also ran the control cable. You can see that one there. It comes out. That goes to the RT, and it goes back up onto the dash where I showed you earlier where my remote head is. And the coax is RG316 all the way across. This is actually coming. I came out of the from under the floor there where I was telling you before. Came down along the back kick panel or the tray cover there, and then up underneath the B pillar again, and then came over to the back of the radio so that it's completely covered under the carpet and out of the way where it can't get smashed. Grommet, not my first choice anymore for a car, but that's a better than just drilling a hole. Way better than just drilling a hole. Never ever run your wire just through a raw hole. Don't be running it through the door. Don't be running it, and closing the door on it. I've seen that stuff too. I only say that because I've seen it. Don't do that. Don't even do it temporarily, because as soon as you close that, you're going to have intermittent problems, or you're going to start your car on fire. Just don't do it. Wait, and install it properly. You'll appreciate it. There's the one I found on the internet the other night when I was doing this class. What's that? Waterproof cord grip. It's the same concept as what I was talking about before. I didn't take a picture of the original ones we were using, but it's kind of the same thing with threaded on one side, a metal or plastic nut on the side that you can put it on the inside or the outside. It doesn't really matter. And then this part down here is where your wire is coming out, and it's usually, some of them are a little bit bigger, where you would slide a piece of PVC tubing down over top of it to run, conduit to run wire or whatever. Water pipe does the same thing, but I like the gray stuff. What?
So that's got the nipple sticking out. Is that meant for the flexible PVC to slide on?
Probably could, but it has a gland in it.
That has a gland inside.
Has a gland inside.
Squeezes on it?
Yep.
And that's a different cord.
Yeah.
And that one's waterproof. That was the O-ring next to the.
And it has an O-ring up here.
The other thing is
best choice.
The grommet he showed earlier, just the round one. You have to seal those because it's a firewall, and it's meant to keep the fire in the engine compartment. So you don't want a hole there that just will allow things to come through.
That's why you put RTV on the outside usually, if you can.
So fill it up.
Fill it up. Fill it up. That was my point too. More than anything, that's probably more important than the water. But you're going to get water in there if you don't put something over that. Anyway, those probably at $1, maybe a couple bucks. Are really cheap insurance. Don't run anything through a raw hole. Period. Don't run it through knife hand. Don't run it through raw hole. All right. Fuse everything at the battery. We kind of already went over this, but fuse it at the battery. Like I talked about before, you can either use individual fuse holders. You just have a whole bunch of things you're trying to connect to your battery, or you can come off your battery with a big, like maybe a 8 or 6 gauge wire, and then run that to a fuse block or something that's specifically for your ham gear, that has terminals that you can tie down your positive and your negatives on. And that way you're only putting one connection to your battery for positive and for negative. Hook right to the battery. And remember, or maybe it wasn't, what class was it that I was given about? Oh, PMs. Remember the PM class where we talked about battery, cleaning the battery off? Well, there's the reason why not only the battery terminals themselves to keep your vehicle started, but you start getting the rusty crusties on your radio connections, she no worky. And it's easily fixed if you just do your PMs. Okay, putting fuses up in the front. could prevent a fire in the passenger compartment. And that was one of the things that we always worried about when we were building cop cars, because the sheriff himself one time said we had a 100 amp fuse, circuit breaker with a sweep arm on it that was usually mounted up in the engine compartment for powering all the accessories, so that at the end of the shift, you go in there and push a little red button and it opens it up and the car starts on Monday. So the sheriff at the time didn't like that because he didn't want to have to get out and open the hood. And all he had in his car was a radio, but he'd leave it on. So Monday, the car was dead. Every single freaking Monday, he's calling for a jump. So he wanted we told him circuit breaker. Well, I don't like having that circuit breaker in there. So he wanted it on the console on the inside of his car. So we put it on the console, and we just said, if you get in an accident, you could burn alive. And he's I don't anyway.
Why'd you put a drop relay on?
Pardon?
Why'd you put a drop relay on?
I don't know. I wasn't building the cars then. The sheriff's office or the motor pool was.
Or just have to?
Yeah, but then the one out in the, if it's a 100 amp fuse and his radio's rated at 20 and it pulls more power. I mean, there's no point in having two. Just put one and stop being a lazy butt. How about that?
Put two, make one of them just a switch and not a breaker.
But then he still has to. That's not my point. My point is that you don't want to fuse things in the passenger compartment. I've seen things like that. State Patrol, they home brewed. They have really beautiful consoles. Their wiring is just absolutely fantastically beautiful, but all their fuses are inside the console, and we're just like, they were getting in an accident. Somebody's going to get burnt, or they possibly could get burnt and get trapped in the car, and the wire catches the car on fire in the passenger compartment. That's the whole idea, is safety. Fuse each major component separately. That means if you have your cell phone charger and you have your GPS charger and your radio hooked up, and you got a CB and you got a flashlight charger and a whole bunch of other crap, don't just pile them all on one fuse. Because first of all, you're probably going to exceed the rating of the fuse. And second of all, it's just not good practice to be wadding everything up on one connection. No point. Fuse them all separately. That would be a good reason to have a bus. Sir?
So yeah, so like in your installation, or in my truck, I have I think it's the 4 or 6 wire coming from the battery into the compartment. But then the wire drops down inside. So you need it, so fuse of my battery protects that wire coming in. So then if you start plugging a number 10 or even a number 14 wire into that connector, that is now needs to be fused. Because if I'm protecting the wire coming in with, let's say, a 30 amp fuse, and I now have a 14 gauge wire, that wire will burn up before that fuse goes. So you need to fuse according to the wire size. Again, drop down the wire size, or your main fuse has to be rated for the smallest wire in the network.
Yeah, so if you have a 20 amp radio and you have a 7.5 amp battery or a flashlight charger on there and you hook them together, 7.5 amps is going to blow the first time you key your radio up. So fuse them separately. Just fuse them separately on a bus. Okay? They don't cost that much for a little bus thing. You could probably make one. We've even taken individual fuse holders and you twist one end all together, big enough, you get them stripped back far enough, you twist them all together and you crimp them down with a big crimp, and then you crimp the power wire that goes to the battery. It's still fused separately. And then the line side or the load side of that goes off to each individual piece of equipment with the appropriately sized fuse. If you solder, some people are psycho and they want to solder in a car or an automotive installs, crimp it first, then solder it. Because if you solder it and try and crimp it, you better be Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, to pinch that down enough to get the mechanical connection. The reason I say about soldering, and I don't do it, some people are like, well, it'll get corrosion, it'll get dirty, it'll get wet, it'll get this, it'll get that. I know that there are people in here that know how to solder. People in general know how to solder, but there's different levels. You can get stuff to stick together, and then you can do it kind of good, or you can do it properly. And most people can't do it properly. They make a cold solder joint. And what does a vehicle do? You're bouncing down the road. What does it do? It vibrates, it bounces, it jiggles, it does all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Stuff gets hot, stuff gets cold. Solder joint is cold and it cracks, and then you're struggling for 6 months trying to figure out why you got intermittent power issue. Crimp it and then solder it if you're going to do that. Mechanical connections are the best ever in a vehicle. The best. Do you solder to the battery terminals? No. You crimp a connector on and you put it on and tighten it down with a bolt. Mechanical. Use the correct tools. I have this capped because, again, in my experience, I've seen all kinds of weird stuff, especially on coax, but power. The proper way to crimp power is with a stab crimper. You got one side of the jaw has a kind of a hoop in it. You drop the wire and the splice in there, and then the other side has a stab. What would you call it? A mandrel, or it has a die that comes down and it crimps and it actually pokes the metal down in that one spot tight on the wire, and then it also uniformly crushes the cable, the butt splice around the wire. If you use a pair of pliers, I'm not going to be happy if I see it. I'm going to be like, yeah, whatever. First of all, and second of all, you're probably not going to be able to keep that wire inside that crimp. I've seen them; they crimp them on there and they're flat like a pancake, and then the wire's loose. You can just go like that and pull it right apart. No good, no bueno, because one end of that's hot. One end of that goes to the battery, and she's going to be yeah. So don't do that. Use the proper tools. If you don't have them, call somebody that does, or a kit's not that much. I think amongst everybody that's in here, there's probably 3/4 of the people in here have the right stuff for not only this stuff here for power wire, but for coax. That's another thing I've seen. Don't use a pair of pliers on your coax connectors, because you crush that thing down, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, my SWR is like 6-1, and I just got done doing this. What's going on? Scott, what do you think? Well, you shouldn't have used needle nose pliers to crimp the coax on, first of all, because it's all shorted together because you squashed everything together improperly. Use the right tools. And if you're going to do bolts down, use a ratchet or wrenches. I know we all cheat with pliers. I've done it before too, but don't use pliers. Can't get them tight enough, or you get them too tight and they get stripped or whatever. Don't do that. Use the correct tools. One little tiny fuse in my truck. It's a 20 amp, but it's kind of misleading, because you can see right here, that's the negative side of my battery, but this is the wire that comes out. That's where the wire comes out of that split loom. That's the one that goes back over to the firewall I showed you the picture of. It comes back over. I fused it right there because I didn't really want the fuse to be over right next to the exhaust manifold that's on the other side of the battery. I just wanted to keep that back away. So I wanted to have that fuse tucked away some. You'd have to see that every engine compartment is different. Sometimes there's room for all kinds of nice, pretty stuff, and other times there's not. That's secure. It's a waterproof fuse holder. It works just fine and dandy. But it's fused right next to the battery. I think the lead that goes from that fuse to the battery is about that long.
You add one other thing. Do not run your power line along. If your plug lines go like across from one side of the car under the hood to the other, you see that nice air conditioning line that's nice and cold and sweaty. Don't tie off to that.
Yeah. You might induce energy onto your power leads that'll come out in your radio from the coil packs or spark plug wires and things like that too. If you got a bad wire, they can snap through. That's usually what happens there if you got bad connections. But you don't want to you want to follow, at the very least, you want to follow the factory wire somehow. If there's loops up under the engine compartment, if you have to come across to the battery for whatever crazy reason, follow all that stuff because that's where they put it, and it's probably the safest there.
The thing is with those air conditioning too, there's two things. One is getting real cold, you can actually go and start inducing moisture into your wire.
Potentially.
And the other thing with it is one of those tubes is real hot.
Yeah. So dress all cables down nicely and secure where needed. So what you want to do when you first put all this stuff in, Even your coax that has a finished end on it, if you buy that factory end, I do that all the time too, because sometimes that real little stuff, or you don't have the connectors, or you buy it that way, it already has a connector on it. Doesn't really matter. Lay that stuff out in there before you connect anything up, and dress it nicely. Just make sure nothing's too tight. You don't want a bunch of extra anything. And I don't care what anybody says about coax, okay? 38 years of doing this mess in VHF and especially UHF, if you coil your excess coax up and tape it up all nice and pretty and stuff it somewhere, bad news. It's like you might just as well take a pair of vice grips and put it on your water hose. That's what you're doing, is making an RF choke, okay? VHF, not so much. HF, you can get away with some of it. There's no way that you can readily and nicely coil up the excess from a 17-footer if you don't need but maybe 6. But what I've done, like on my truck, I came all the way across underneath the seat and then back up and around like so to eat up some of that extra. And any of the extra, make big loops. If you have to make loops, make big loose loops. Don't tighten anything up tight. You definitely will have problems on UHF for sure. Your SWR may look okay, but I'm telling you right now, you're going to lose some. You shouldn't do, unless you need a choke. I mean, I don't know. What do you have for chokes in yours? Do you have chokes on your HF stuff in the truck? Yeah, he has pretty much have to in a truck, in a HF install. You have to bond everything together, etc. But when you're dressing them, don't make big loops. Power wire doesn't matter. If you have excess, cut it off. Just cut it off and leave service length. Same thing with coax. If you have a raw piece of coax, I would say anywhere between 12 and 16 inches of service length. And I say service length so that when you or somebody else comes along and has to take it out to help you fix it, I'm not fighting it because you got it so tight in there. All I can do is take the screws loose and it won't move because you have it so tight, okay? Then we're just going to dike it all off and start over because that's about all you can do. Leave service length so that you can pull stuff out. Coax, same thing, leave 12 to 16 inches extra if you're going to be crimping your own connectors on. But think about all that stuff before you cut it off too. You got to make sure that you lay it all in nice and neat. You get it all laid out nice. Zip ties, they're cheap at Harbor Freight. Buy Harbor Freight, buy anyone's, and zip tie stuff down nice and neatly. Cut the excess of them off, especially when they go through the cable trays, because they'll just make a mess if you don't. Protect cables that need protected. Split loom works great. That's another thing you can get at Harbor Freight or other places that's fairly cheap. They make some stuff that looks like the Chinese finger cuffs or thumb cuff things too. That stuff's okay, but it's generally not split. Pardon me, it's not split, so you have to push the wire through and then pull it back out. Split loom's already split. You just slide the wire down in there and you can run your finger down along it and push it in the loom. If you want to tape it shut, you can. I never really do unless it's at the end so that it doesn't come out the end. Anyway, split loom. Make the final connections to the battery. So you should probably have it, at the very least, the negative terminal disconnected. You're going to be hooking up stuff to the positive terminal anyway, so you might as well just disconnect both sides, because if you got to fuse them both, then you're going to have it taken apart. Make sure all that stuff's clean. Make sure that's a good time to clean your battery off really well. Put some anti-seize or some dielectric grease on the battery terminals. And then the very last thing that you should do once you get her all back together and sparked up is do an SWR return loss test to ensure you have a good antenna install. That's the last thing any mobile install should have done. Because, it's all great and cool. You got this brand new $500 radio and you drive down the road and, 2 weeks later, it won't transmit. And somebody tests the power and it's got 2 watts out of a 50-watt radio. Well, you smoked it because your antenna was no good because you didn't do an SWR test when you got done installing it. I keep thinking I see a hand up over there, but it's not set, whatever that thing is. All right. There's the final picture of that one where I had the red and black wire poking out. You can see where the carpet split. That's factory split. That's where the cable was coming out. Well, it's up underneath there and it goes all the way underneath and comes out where that heating duct is. You can also see my breadboards pushed back underneath the seat there. It's all, I have a floor mat in there that kind of helps it too, but it's got the screws down through it so it doesn't move once you get it in there. The wires are already zip tied together onto the breadboard. Slide it back in there. and it's done. And I have Andersons on my stuff. I don't know too many hams that don't use Andersons these days. It's nice because you just disconnect it, take the antenna off, the control cables off, pull it all out, take the head down, hook the cables back up, and you're off and running on a bench somewhere. Just the way I like to do it. Another dress down, or that's a picture showing split loom. I guess it kind of doubled up, but the first picture was not to really emphasize that, but split loom is on that wire all the way out to where the fuse holder is. I think it's all the way out to I know it's all the way out to the battery connection. I had to kind of piece some together to go around the fuse holder itself, but it's all protected. And there's the power lead connected to my battery.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it's common sense, but not everybody's done it. Not everybody is interested in doing it. I know people that are like, hey, can you help me? Oh yeah, I'll help anybody. All you gotta do is call me and make the coffee. I used to say, and cookies, but I can't do that anymore, so whatever. I think I missed a picture somewhere. It's neither here nor there. Anyway, that's all I have for you. If you ever have any problems, there's plenty of people around here. I know Mike knows. He's pretty good. He's an electrician by trade, so he knows a lot. Lou's done a bunch. I don't know who else. John's probably done a bunch. I've done a million of them. Grant's done some. Don's done some. Everybody in here has probably done at least one, because you have a car with an antenna on it, right? Or you're just driving around with an antenna like I do sometimes.
Been there.
I've done that. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks. And you won't see me next month.